Hello, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre. This is a Stark Reflections on Writing and Podcast live chat with Roland Denzel, the Indestructible Author. Roland, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to delay a little bit at the beginning in case people are still just tuning in.
Sure.
But what we are going to be chatting about is we're going to be chatting about home space, working from home, ergonomics, all the things. You as a writer yourself, as someone who's overcome these things, have had to learn how to do these things, but now you help authors who happen to also be humans, authors and other humans, with that. And so I thought it would be cool for us to share a little bit about. Let's go into your background as a writer first. I want to talk a little bit about who you are and what kind of stuff you write.
Well, so I've been writing for a long time, probably like most authors, right? Writing since you're a teenager or whatever. So I wrote short stories, screenplays, none of them published. I like to think that they would have been published if the shows hadn't been canceled before somebody got hold of the scripts, but we'll never know. But as a grown-up, I've written 6 health and fitness books partnered with my wife and co-author Galina, and she takes a little bit more of the mental, emotional, and the movement specialty side, and I'm more of the nutrition and the habits, and I can fake it on the exercise science side. But she cheats. She's got all the muscles memorized. But that's my nonfiction side, and then on the fiction side, I'm currently writing. I've written a space opera that's sort of in editing with a co-author, and then I'm writing book 2 of an urban fantasy series right now. Book 1's not out yet. I'm going to do the 2 or 3 in a row.
Okay, so you're gonna have a couple or 2 or 3 ready, and then you're gonna sort of rapid release or make sure that when the fans get hungry for book 2, you can get it out to them right away.
Correct. That's what I say. My actual plan is to make sure that the things that I think of in book 2 can actually go back and be seated properly.
Oh, I see. That's the real strategy.
In book 1, yeah. So like Neil Gaiman says, with your first draft, your job with the second draft is to make you look like I'd say whatever, make it look like you knew what you were doing, right? And so I'm going to say that I'm going to go all the way back to the second book needs to make sure that it jives with the first book, etc. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm really excited about it. Yeah. In fact, I'm really excited as I just got off a class where I was where another author was working with me to help fine tune my protagonist, supercharge.
I wonder who's doing the supercharge thing. Not anyone that we know named Claire.
Yeah, maybe Claire Taylor. Yeah, she was really good. It was a really great class.
Awesome. So you as a writer, it's a sedentary lifestyle because you don't dictate, right? You sit or stand at a desk. Tell me how you had to overcome a bunch of issues related to repetitive strain injury, etc.
I had carpal tunnel syndrome from years back, just because before I was an author, I was sitting behind a desk I was a systems analyst, a printing specialist. So I spent all this time behind Macs and PCs and fancy supercomputers doing all sorts of coding and diagramming and designing and typing emails and all these things. So all day long, I basically lived behind a keyboard for 30, I'm 53. So for 30 years, right?
30 years behind a keyboard. Okay, so you had to deal with what the outcome of that, right?
Yeah. So it had the tingling, the numbness of the fingers, something called that's the carpal tunnel syndrome. Then I had ulnar neuropathy, which is sort of like I'm not that. Again, my wife has all the muscles memorized, right, and the nerves. But the ulnar nerve runs down through the elbow, and it was causing people might experience it sometimes if they sleep with their arms close and they're like, oh, my arm's asleep, right? So a lot of times that's the nerve that gets pinched, or the flow nerve conduit gets pinched off, causes numbness. So I had to deal with that. Head and neck things, that's a very common thing with authors. The more you type, the more you're leaning like this, right? And yeah, especially with laptops, when it wasn't as big of a problem with desktops because, I had a big CRT. Right? big,
Right.
very large CRT. And for those of you who are too young to know, a CRT stands for cathode ray tube. It's the big thing that looks like the old-fashioned televisions, but they were so large, and then you would bring them up and raise them up to eye level just naturally so you could fit your keyboard underneath so you could type. But then when laptops come around, now they're like super convenient, and like because they have the name laptop, people put them down on their laps. So what you end up doing is you end up typing down like this. And that causes a lot of neck, upper back pain, and it kind of cascades all the way down.
Okay. All right. So you work with clients now. You've taken the things that you've learned, especially about your own body and what that work environment has done to you, and you help authors with that. You also help them with other things, not specifically related to. Well, it could be related to sedentary lifestyle, but I mean, weight loss in general, health in general, et cetera, right?
Yeah, I mean, primarily I've been a health coach, a weight loss coach for years now. I was, for people who don't know me, I've lost 110 pounds 17 years ago, and I've kept it off ever since, even though I have a sedentary lifestyle, right? So the key is you find this balance. Like, it's not bad to sit. Sitting is not going to kill you. Sitting too long in the same position and not doing other things in your non-sitting time is what's the problem. So I've overcome the weight and the aches and pains and the nerve things, and I help other people do that too. Whether you're an author or, I mean, I started not working with authors, but with people who work in office environments like me.
Right.
Like, I spent so much time behind the wheel of a car, traveling from client to client in desks, and that's what most of my clients are too: computer programmers, gamers, and authors.
Okay. So I guess now the dream author lifestyle, of course, is not to have to get in a vehicle or go commute somewhere, get on a bus or a subway, and go into work somewhere and then come back. Right. The dream is to stay at home, in your underwear or whatever, and put on the coffee and just live that dream life of being at home and writing. So that's the dream for writers. It apparently is the nightmare for a lot of people right now, where they can't leave their homes and they're stuck. And instead of, I mean, yeah, even if we work in an office, there's a sedentary lifestyle, but at the very least you had to, walk to the bus or get to your vehicle and park and get in. And so you at least got that sort of extraneous tiny bits of exercise, or at least excuses to get up. If you're working from home, is this a case where people are more prone to just get at their desk and that's it, right? They don't get up all day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all experienced, I mean, it's rare for newer authors to sit in one spot and just like be in such a role that they don't have to get up. But we've all done it at work, where we have a project and we skip lunch, or we eat lunch at our desk. We just have more and more and more coffee, and we just sit there and just keep working. And eventually you will look down at the clock and you're like, oh, I've been sitting here for 3 hours, right? And all that sedentary time plays a toll both on your body overall, because it's the lack of blood flow, lymph flow. You're making curves, unnatural curves, right? So nerves are going around these curves and it's not like a pinched nerve, but it is being slowly, pressure against it.
Okay.
Those things add up. But also it does a number on your blood sugar control. There are studies that show that getting up and moving around as little as 5 minutes, not exercising, just getting up and moving around for as little as 5 minutes every 30 minutes or so, can reduce your blood sugar by up to 20% and improve insulin sensitivity by 20%. So, I mean, those are both good things, because I work with a lot of authors, and I hear that they have, they're overweight, they have type 2 diabetes, all sorts of things that can be related to, and not to mention like we already talked about, the tense shoulders and the craning forward neck. Yeah.
So the Pomodoro technique is one thing. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But are there other things? So you said, every 5 minutes or so. I have my Fitbit, which reminds me, if I didn't get so many steps in an hour, it says you have 10 minutes to get X amount of steps. I mean, that to me is a nice kick in the pants. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get up and go get another coffee, or which is
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily as good for me, but getting up and moving, changing position, that reminder. What are some other techniques people can use
Yeah.
for that?
We can certainly talk about the coffee, because coffee is not the big problem that a lot of people think it is, unless you just have tons and tons of it. But that, what you just said, you're reminded to get up and do something. It could be as simple as going for a drink of water or getting a cup of coffee. And if you're doing that often enough, you're going to also have to go to the bathroom. So, so
Then
those,
I'm getting up twice an hour then.
yeah. So the reason I like the Pomodoro technique, and if you're not familiar, Pomodoro stands for tomato, and I actually have a little
props.
Tomato. I have a little tomato timer here, and the man who developed the technique used one of these timers, which is Italian for tomato, Pomodoro. That's why it's called that.
Oh my God, I never even realized that.
Yeah, like the Pomodoro sauce.
Yes, I'm going to do the French version. I'm just going to be tomate.
There you go. Come up with your own method, right?
Wow.
I'm gonna do aubergine, the eggplant, an eggplant timer. But so he played around with it, and his theory was that there's a certain amount of time that you can concentrate on something before your brain starts to taper off. It's not like a cliff, like the Amazon 30-day cliff, right? It's a slow taper off. Like you have enough mental energy to concentrate on something, and then starts to taper off. And he found that for him, 25 minutes was about where it tapered off. And experimented with a lot. And then he started to play around with what is the magic number of minutes that I can use as a little break. Like, not that's going to get me totally out of the groove, but it's enough to reset things. Let me think about something else, sort of gently think about something else, and then jump back in and be like reinvigorated. And I can pick up right where I left off. So it was this 25-5 is the default of the Pomodoro technique. And you don't have to stay with 25-5, but if you get a Pomodoro app or go on and use a website that has a Pomodoro timer, they all default to 25-5, but you can usually change them to whatever. But why I like it is because it not only allows my my analytical mind to divide up my day into half-an-hour chunks, right? So I can take, like, for instance, I use one of these little whiteboards, right? And a lot of times the night before, I will write down like what I'm going to do in the morning. So I'm going to get up and I do it by half an hour. Pomodoros. Pomodoro. It's probably not the right actual word, but that's what I call it, Pomodoros.
Okay.
And so I can divide. It's very easy to think in these 25-5 or 30-minute sections, and I lay those out until lunchtime. So that's 8, depending on what time you get up, right?
Oh, wow.
And how long you're going to work. But the other thing that's great about this 25-5 is that is one of the times that was studied both by some diabetes prevention societies and also some weight loss groups that found that merely 5 minutes of getting up and walking around was enough to bring the blood sugar down, increase insulin sensitivity or improve insulin sensitivity. But also in type 2 diabetics, it was enough to get them to lose weight. There's a hormonal thing other than just the insulin that goes into effect, that when you move around on a regular basis and when you sit for a long period of time, these hormones start to drop, and that can gives you that sort of extra weight around the middle.
Okay.
Cortisol-induced weight gain, let's call it.
So what I love about this is what you're saying is that it doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of planning to make a pretty significant difference in your health, right?
Yeah. So you can be more productive and healthier all in one. So
right, and
whichever one that's important to you, the other one's free.
Oh, it's a free side effect, right? Either the productivity or the health, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. No, so I want to go back to ergonomics, because in a lot of cases in workplaces, when you're at work, there are often I know when I worked at McMaster University, for example, HR was very they would come in and measure and do ergonomic assessments of workspaces and stuff like that. But we don't have that in our homes. We don't have the luxury. So what are some things that people can do when they're setting up their either, permanent, because, they want to write from home, or a temporary workspace where they're going to be doing some work now?
Well, let me tell you, in a way, not having those people come in and dial you in with the perfect ergonomics
Right.
is a blessing in disguise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because ergonomics, I mean, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, but ergonomics are really designed by people who want to get you in a position so you can do more work longer, right?
Which is kind of against what we were just talking about.
Yeah. So it's you get an ergonomic chair and it's so comfortable. And yes, it is, an ergonomic chair is probably better than a regular chair, right? But any position that you stay in for too long suddenly becomes less perfect over time. So you get in the perfect position, and if you stay in that position all the time, well, it's, in a month, it's just as bad as the bad position from before, because it's the fact that you're in a position repetitively for long periods of time that's in general causing the problem.
Wow. Okay.
So what I recommend to people is to have a variety. We call it the dynamic office, right? So you have, that's why I prefer to tell people to get a sit-stand desk instead of a standing desk, because you can sit and stand. There's nothing wrong with sitting. The problem is we sit too much. So a sit-stand desk sort of takes care of that, but it has to be easy enough to where, you will actually move it up and down. Or like in my case, I have a laptop on a riser here. I can take it anywhere I want. I can put it on my lap, or I can put it on a countertop, or I can turn it around and put it on my sit-stand lifter. Or I can be here on this desk now. And then with the chair, I have a chair that goes up and down to different, and I don't lock it into this. I don't find a specific height and then like leave it there forever. I change it around.
So wait, you're at the tall end of that chair right now, propped up in the chair?
Yeah, it's actually a stool. I can
level stool. There you go. Look at that. Oh, okay, cool.
And it's actually a wobble stool. It's weighted.
Okay.
And it goes up higher, and then it kind of, well, I can't show you, but it wobbles. But it is higher. Right?
Okay.
And so I can sit up higher, I can tilt it back, and I can lean forward, so it could become like a leaning, like they call it a leaning stool, right? So you get all sorts of different things. So it keeps you, like, one of the biggest problems with sitting is we find this position where everything's right angles, right? So your back is basically straight, your hips, and then your legs, right? So everything's right angles. So when you have a stool at a different height, or a standing desk where you're leaning on a bar stool height, right? You change the angles of your knees, you change the angles of your hips, you take the weight off of them differently. You can shift to different legs, etc. And if you have a standing desk and it doesn't go up and down, you can do different things. Like one of the biggest things that I found to allow people to stand longer and be more comfortable is to have some sort of a stool for 1 foot.
For 1 foot.
A box. Yeah, try it. If you have something.
Oh my God,
nearby.
yeah. Well, I've got because I standing desk here, and when I'm on the stool, I have a little ledge to put my feet on.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're right. I've had this here the whole time, and I've never. Thank you. See, I learned two things. I learned what tomato means in Italian, and and this is awesome. And it actually feels good, because that's the foot where I'm having plantar fasciitis.
Oh no!
Probably from standing too much at my standing desk.
Well, I mean, if you probably already had it's one of those things that comes to the front, like
it came back.
It is what came back, but it's plantar fasciitis is usually from the fascia in the back of the body. It's too tight, and that's at the end of your fascial chain. So you have two ends, one up here, it kind of wraps around, and the other one goes all the way down. And one, like when it's too tight, one of them's going to lose, right? So it's got to stop somewhere. So you have this pull there in your on the plantar fasciitis, with the plantar fascia, which causes the plantar fasciitis. So all sorts of different things. Working on your calves could be a big deal.
Okay.
Different shoes when you're not running, different shoes when you're running. And there's all sorts of different things that can be, that can cause that. I've had plantar fasciitis too. I wasn't on the list. I thought I wanted to cover the more author related stuff. We all have, authors get foot problems too.
We're two authors here talking, and we both have this issue.
I know. Well, Mark and I were talking. We have a lot of stuff in common you'd never think about.
Not just their snazzy haircuts
That's
and
right.
facial hair, right?
We've seen the espresso book machines in person.
Yeah, all those things. That is
Yeah.
fantastic. The other thing, so I want to think about is, so what can authors do, or what can people who are stuck at home now, and maybe even not able to leave the home, or only once a day, or for short periods of time, or whatever, or not in the same way, can't get to the gym right now. I can't get to the gym. What are little things that authors can do with limited space or limited equipment to get that exercise?
Well, the first thing to remember is that if you have access to outside, take advantage of walking. We're not in like total lockdown here. We're allowed to walk around the neighborhood.
Right.
We can, like you can go running, right? We can run here. We don't have those kind of restrictions. We have the restriction of staying 6 feet away, right? So people underestimate the value of walking. This is what we were designed to do, right? Walk, 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 run, run, run. You don't have to run, but walking is enough. And put on headphones, listen to a podcast. I can recommend a podcast right here. And I have my own if you're into health and fitness. But the walk as much as possible. Do other things that you wouldn't normally do. Take advantage of this time, like use your exercise time you would normally do to stretch in front of the TV. Or if you have a foam, do you have a foam roller?
No, I don't have a foam roller. No.
So a foam roller, that'd be a great thing to get, a foam roller for rolling your calves and the back of your hamstrings to sort of loosen them up. And it can go a great way towards helping with that plantar fasciitis over time. But, we used to joke that that's why God put carpet in front of televisions. So you can lay there and you can do your stretching, and you can put a yoga mat down, and you can do, twists and all sorts of different things that are not super active, but they're still important. Because if you can't get to the gym to lift weights or to do high intensity cardio, you can still get in plenty of movement. And we do the hashtag all movement matters, right? Because all of these things are very important to us as human beings.
Wow. That is fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate that. I never even thought about the foam roller. I know the one exercise I'd done was sometimes when I'm on my way up and down the stairs with the coffee, is I'll pause and I'll do a few calf stretches, right, on the from the edge of the steps. If I just coming up one flight of steps, I do a couple stretches each step. I at least I'm staying on my feet for a little bit longer, and I'm getting a little bit of that exercise too.
Yeah. It all adds up. So we have this tendency to think like in everything, right? If it can't be perfect, it's not worth doing. But we're not living in a time where everything's, it's not perfect, right? We have to make do with what we have. And if you think back to the kind of exercise that our ancient ancestors did, they probably didn't exercise. They just did work, right? They worked in their yard, right. They worked on the farm, they worked around the house. And it's only really the last 100 years or so that we've started to exercise, yet we're not in as good a shape as we were 200 years ago. So what's changed, right? So we've become more sedentary. So being less sedentary is probably the first thing that you should tackle before you work on more exercise, quote unquote exercise.
Okay, so it's like a gradual movement from just sitting all day to getting up once an hour to every half an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. So before you run the marathon.
Yeah, so think about if we have 168 hours in the week. That's what I have. I think you probably have the same number of hours, right?
I have the exact same 24-hour schedule.
Oh, in Canada, use the same system?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So if you go to the gym 3 or 4 times per week, what is that, 3 to 4 hours, right? So there's not a lot. You could do something that's going to take care of that 168 hours. But if you have 164 hours when you're basically being sedentary, those 4 hours don't add up to that much.
Right.
It's such a small slice. So the more you can do in those other 164 165 hours. And some people go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour, right? So you still have 165 hours. You need to do some things to be less sedentary.
Wow, that's cool. I like how you break that up, and again, it goes back to Pomodoro. You break things up, right? And you make it manageable, etc. So I'm going to
Yeah.
share a comment from Kitty. Kitty said, "Beachbody has some great workouts." Are you familiar with Beachbody?
Yeah. If you want to do something that's more um, like if you want to do something in your home that is really going to bring on a sweat, like sort of a full body thing,
Right.
Beachbody has some great things. They have, because you can do, like, a lot of people have a small dumbbell set or a kettlebell or 2 at home, or some bands, or some of those exercise bands,
Right.
not those chest ones that we saw from the old movies, but the, like, rubbery bands. And so Beachbody has a lot of things like that as well. So it's a great way. I mean, there's all sorts of things, like, you could do, like, you can get all sorts of yoga videos on YouTube, or sign up for all your favorite trainer probably has something that they're doing on Zoom these days, right? Because we're all switching from in person to online. So support your local trainer whenever possible, because
Oh, of course, yeah. Support the local trainer, the local. That's awesome. So in terms of balance when it comes to sedentary, getting up and moving and changing, right? So you're not stuck in one position. What's that's got to have, because you talk about productivity for writers, or other things that you want to do in health. What is the connection between that and the balance of the mind and how you feel?
well, I mean, the more, in general, the healthier you are, the easier it is for you to focus, right? So if you're getting enough, no one wants to hear you get more sleep, but if you're getting enough sleep,
Right.
right, and it's actually more important to go to bed earlier, even if you get up later, right? So, like, the amount of sleep is important, but going to bed as sooner, close to bedtime, closer to dark, that's our natural cycle.
Right.
That's going to be better. Spending some time, even if it's overcast, spending some time outdoors. So the rays are there, whether you can see them or not. Right.
Right.
So even people who live in, like, Seattle or Portland, where it's going to be overcast, the
Right.
rays are still coming down. Your eyes see them. Your skin senses it. It changes your circadian rhythms. That's an important thing. But moving around, keeping your blood sugar, we talked about blood sugar earlier, keeping your blood sugar steady goes a long way towards keeping your writer's mind going forward, right? The blood sugar crashes, you get hangry, right? You're not going to write well when you're hangry. So that's a good thing. So the more up and down, the more movement, more changes you make to your position, the more regular they are, the better you're going to keep your blood sugar and your focus.
Okay. That's fantastic. There are people watching live, and Krishana just says, "Hey guys," so hey,
Well, hey,
Krishana.
Krishan.
And if there are any questions that you guys have for Roland, feel free to pop them in either YouTube or on Facebook, and we'll kind of go through them. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep pumping you with all kinds of questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, do it.
So I want to go back to. Now. I recently I have a standing desk that Liz built for me, and I have old standard IKEA desk, and I decided when she built the standing desk not to get rid of the sit down desk, because I wanted to alternate, and so what I tend to do is I tend to start the morning sitting for a bit, and then obviously in the morning I'm getting up a lot more to get coffee. Then in the afternoon it's more to get rid of the coffee and lunch and things like that I'm doing. But I find in the mornings I tend to sit. For the first couple hours I'm sitting. I'm trying to get up once every half hour or hour, and then I migrate over to the stand up desk. And then I also alternate between propping myself up, like on a stool, like a bar stool, because that's the kind of stool that I have in my house, and standing and sitting. Now I tend to stand when I do interviews or when I'm because I find I have more energy. I don't know if it's something about the diaphragm.
Probably, yeah. Like when you sit, when your legs are bent, like you're giving yourself less room to breathe, right? It's pushing
Right.
that in. And the same thing when you're like caved over. So like people who do, like if you're talking and things like that. So you like with singers, like a lot of them, like they talk about like using your diaphragm, right? So a lot of that is not like pushing with your diaphragm, but it's having the space within your diaphragm, like that the freedom for your diaphragm
Right.
to lower and rise,
Right.
raise, whatever. I write good. I
So,
don't use words good.
but is that I mean, feel free to critique me. Is that something? Should I alternate between actually sitting in the chair?
No, I mean, you don't have to go back and forth.
Right.
Like
Okay.
you can, mix it up. Like you'll know, like when you, like after your fourth time getting up, if your hips, like if you're like, oh, my hips are a little bit, maybe that's the time to switch
Okay.
when you do that, or spend some time doing something else before you go back, right? So the actual Pomodoro is 4 in a row, right? 4 cycles, and then you take a long break, like
Right.
20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, and then you're back for 4 more before you take and then you take your lunch or whatever, right?
Right.
So because so like you can even do it something like that, do 4, take a longer break. That's 2 hours, right? And then, with tiny little breaks, then a longer break where you're doing something, maybe you walk around the block, right?
Okay.
But that's a really good way to do it. And what you said works with a lot of the authors and the coders and the office workers that I work with, because there are certain things, especially when you're starting with a standing desk, that it's really hard to do standing. Like be creative and write a story sometimes doesn't work right away when you're standing up, because you're
Right.
still subconsciously thinking about, this is kind of uncomfortable. I really wish I could sit down. So you may not think consciously that you've got that going on, but it's there and it's taking up CPU cycles, right? It's like that program in the back that you wish you could force quit, but you can't until you sit down. So what I usually recommend for people is, if you need to sit down to write, to be creative, do that. But pick something like when it's time to check email, or whether it's on your phone, it's pretty easy to do that standing, right? I
Okay.
can write emails. I could take my laptop and set it on the kitchen counter, and I can write emails all day long. But if somebody asks me to write an action scene or
Right.
a romantic scene or something like that, I want to sit back down. So there's different things that you can do with different things. If you're on a Zoom call, we're all on these Zoom calls, right? If you're mostly just listening in, and you can mute yourself, maybe take yourself off camera, you can do all sorts of things. You can work on your, like your wrists and like your fingers. That's a common thing for carpal tunnel syndrome, is to like work on you don't want to do this. Like you'd feel silly doing this in an office with cubicles surrounded by people. But privacy of your own home, turn off your camera
Just make
or
sure when
show
you go to the
off,
washroom, turn the camera off and the mic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a video going around where
There's a comment from Adam I wanted to share about that standing for creativity. He says, I definitely feel more creative on my feet. If I ever get stuck with a story, I have to go for a walk to sort it out in my head. Same deal with the day job.
that's really good. Yeah, if anyone's read Deep Work by Cal Newport,
Newport,
right?
yes.
So he talks about productive meditations, where
Right.
he says, I'm going to go for a walk for half an hour. He decides before he leaves what he's going to think about, like what problem is he going to solve. And then he, doesn't put a podcast on, unfortunately. So you're going to lose one there,
He's not
Mark.
going to listen to mine
But
then,
I know.
or yours.
But don't rub it in. They're going to listen to mine. So, but then like you take like a 10, 15-minute walk, and
Right.
and you just have to keep reminding yourself. It takes practice to get into it, but you have to keep reminding yourself, like, hell, if your mind wanders, and bring it back. Mind wanders, bring it back. But you by the end of your walk, you're like, wow, I thought of the solution to that, or I thought of like what my character is going to do. And it's been sort of a game changer there. I found walking to be a good a game changer. Like I didn't always walk very much. I was
Right.
the same as most people. Go to the gym 4 or 5 times per week, and then the rest of my time I walk to the car, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but that was a great tip there. For people who like dictation, a lot of people find that once they get into dictation a little bit more, they do really well pacing or walking around, or even you get a better microphone and you can walk outside.
Right. So
Like a
the
microphone.
doesn't pick up the wind and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, speaking of walking, there was another creative tip that I remember getting from Dennis Hamill, who is a writer from Brooklyn, and he suggested go for a walk with your character and listen to what your character has to say about everything you pass and see. To you, it's the same old neighborhood, it's the same old thing, but how does your character see that? How would they react? How would they describe it? How would they look at things differently than you do?
Mm.
And sometimes just seeing your character react to something that is common to you or known to you, but is maybe foreign to them. I mean, it depends, right? On if you're writing fantasy or science fiction, like everything might be
That's
bizarre and
true.
strange. What are these strange dragon devices with people inside them clutching this round thing, right? Like, but that could give you insights into your character, and it could inspire something. And maybe out of that, not just taking the walk and the oxygen and the exercise and the change of scenery, but maybe that even just gets you unstuck as a writer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great one.
As well. So I'm going to share another comment from,
Okay.
so Kitty says, I can't sit more than 15 minutes since this coronavirus started. I have to be moving all the time. Anxiety is weird. And so that leads like, anxiety. So exercise and anxiety, what's the correlation here? I'm
Oh, there's
assuming it's a
definitely,
really good
yeah,
one.
there's definitely it's not just a correlation. I mean, they've actually looked at it, and you do exercise. And in this case, even something that's a little bit more strenuous, you get that like oxytocin hit, little dopamine hit, and
Yeah.
it can bring down your anxiety a little
Free
bit.
drugs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So careful, you might get addicted to exercise a little bit, right?
Oh my God, that could be dangerous.
I know. So I think you felt like I used to be a runner, and I would feel that like when I would get in that groove where I would run for a long time and I would sort of feel that. And my wife tells me that when I don't exercise as much, that she can see my anxiety a little bit more, right? So I'm not super anxious,
Right.
but like if you're like these times we're all a little anxious. We don't know what's going to happen, right? So, Kitty, I would say that first of all, these times are special, right? Give yourself some grace and write in 15-minute spurts, right? Because one of the things you can do, like a lot of people they're like, gosh, so what's going on with the news? I see my phone over there. What could have happened? I got to scroll. I got to refresh this thing. But you can do anything for 15 minutes. Like if you put your phone in the other room for 15 minutes, nothing's going to happen. And because you've said, I'm going to check my phone again in 15 minutes, you've given yourself permission. You take that subconscious fear away and you allow yourself to do whatever you need to do for that 15-minute period with complete focus. It might take a little bit of practice. And then you can, once you see that and understand that you are safe in that 15-minute period, you can bump it out to like another, try 25 minutes. That's I don't get any money for the Pomodoro program, but I do like it. So, you go from 15 to 25, to use that 5 minutes to, I don't know that I would always check my phone at some point when you get it there, because that can disconnect you from the writing process.
Right.
But you can do something where you write and you think about what the next part of your scene is going to be. So it's just an ongoing process. But a lot of people have anxiety right now.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Kitty. I'm glad that's helpful. Yeah. A lot of people have anxiety right now, and it's, one of the things that you can do is give yourself some grace, allow yourself permission. It's like almost like grieving, right? So like we're going through this part where we've lost in some ways, our freedom, and we don't know when we're going to get it back. That's a tough thing for a lot of people to deal with. A lot of people are thrown from where they might have worked from home, but their spouse or their kids did not. And now we've got, a lot of people at home, right?
So
Yeah.
what are you doing
So,
invading my workspace? Yeah.
and now you have two people that are anxious in the same space,
Right.
and it's like anxious squared,
Yeah.
right? So cut them some slack, cut them some grace. And then over time, you're going to come up with an agreement where I try to look at my phone or look at the news in the morning. And then I tell myself I have 4 hours or 2 hours of work. And then I'm going to allow myself, I'm going to actually plan to look at it again. So that's the key. I'm not allowing myself to go on social media and look at these things. I'm planning to go on social media to look at these things, because if it's part of your plan, you're not breaking any rules. There's no reason to feel guilty. And because it's a part of your plan, you are safe in the time that you've given yourself. And that's part of this freedom of letting go temporarily of that anxiety. And over time, you'll find that you'll sort of get into the swing of things.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Now, before we go, I want you to share a couple things. Are there? You talked about some books you are working on, the series you were planning in the speculative fiction realm. But do you have any other nonfiction books that are coming out?
Yeah, I'm working on both a productivity for authors, but also ergonomics, like sort of the dynamic, sort of the stuff we're just talking about today, right? So you'd be more productive anyway if you do these things. But there's so many of my author friends have, RSI issues, tension headaches, migraines, and things like that. So I've worked with so many people over the years on these things that it's time to help authors do it. It's not that hard to do. You just have to know what to do, and you have to sort of get yourself in a rhythm and get yourself in this system. And that's been my specialty. That's why I was able to take care of my plantar fasciitis, take care of my carpal tunnel syndrome, take care of my 110 pounds of weight loss, and keep it off for 17 years, because I've put these systems in place and developed these habits. So now over time, it's just second nature now.
Awesome. Excellent. And where can people find out more about you and some of the really great resources that you have available for people?
Well, it's right there on the screen, indestructibleauthor.com, right? And there are sign up pages everywhere. So there's articles, blog posts there. But if you sign up to my email list, you'll get a guide on how to be more productive. And just it's a lot of the things we talked about. It talks a little bit about the Pomodoro technique, a little bit about, you can get the statistics, you can get the references for the blood sugar control, and all those things are in there. So yeah. And then I try to send out, regular tips on health and productivity over time.
And then people will be able to find out when your next books come out as well.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I'm actually collecting data for the ergonomics part of it. So if you go, there's a thing that right on the front page that says everything you learned about ergonomics is wrong. You click there and it'll take you over, and then you can sign up to get a free assessment. And I want to use some of the data that I give from real live authors in the book.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Roland, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me this evening. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that the people listening have. So thank you kindly.
You're very welcome. It was great. It's a lot of fun.
All right. And we will talk to you later. Take care.
Bye, everybody.